In today's video, we have all kinds of news to talk about as NHL training camps get underway. We have some trade talk around the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have a few signings regarding some restricted free agents, including Thomas Harley, Philip Tomasino. A few teams have named new captains, including Chicago and Tampa. Several injury updates as well. Lots of updates around some unsigned RFAs, including a big one on Jeremy Swayman. We have an ownership change with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and a whole lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, NHL training camps are officially open. We're getting ready to kick off the 24-25 season. An exciting day for NHL hockey fans. I've been waiting for this day for several weeks and months now. So certainly great to have hockey back, and it's going to be a lot more of a newsy time, you could say, as we learned a lot today. We're going to probably learn a lot more about a lot of these teams in the coming days as training camps kick off. From a lot of teams today, they did physicals. They did. Some teams were on the ice, some teams were not, but either way, we learned a lot. Most teams had a media availability with their head coach and GM, a few players. It's just lots of information that came out, so we have lots to cover. But before we get into all that stuff, we do have a couple of other things to acknowledge, including a couple of players that have announced their retirement. One being goaltender Raanta. Raanta, of course, played with a number of teams. Last stretch of time here with the Carolina Hurricanes was with the Rangers, the Blackhawks. Raanta has retired after 11 NHL seasons, played 277 games. He's not going to be completely done playing hockey, though. He is intending to play in Europe before he's completely retired, but he is retiring from the NHL. Also, NHL veteran Tyler Ennis has also wrapped up his career and has announced he's fully retired as well. And it's, of course, spent a lot of time with a few American teams like Minnesota and Buffalo, where he got started. Had a couple of different tours in Canada with the Oilers, Senators, and Leafs. Certainly was a pretty solid, smaller, skilled player. Had a good run. Seemed to be an extremely well-liked teammate. And considering all things, I think he had a pretty lengthy run there. At one point, he had some injury scares with some concussions, but he was able to overcome that and extend his career, which is great too. So we certainly want to wish the best to Raanta and Ennis in all their future endeavors here. The Columbus Blue Jackets today, of course, emotional day for them, I'm sure. With the recent passing and the tragic accident involving Johnny Gaudreau and his brother. It really hasn't been all that long since they've had a funeral and everything has gone down. At this point, the Columbus Blue Jackets are focused on opening camp, but they're also focused on honoring Gaudreau and his brother as well. So CBJ did announce some plans today. They called them preliminary plans, so I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of, add to it or do some more things as the year goes on. But there's certainly going to be a variety of things going on, including keeping Johnny's stall in the locker room. They want to have his jersey hanging there. They're not going to completely move on and give his stall to somebody else. They kind of want to, feel like he's with them and a part of them, even though it's only in spirit at this point. It's obviously, and Sean Monahan is going to be seated next to him, which I'm sure for him will be a little bit difficult and emotional, but yet maybe soothing at the same time. I'm not sure, but at the same time here, lots of grieving still going on. Clearly, like I said, it hasn't been very long. A lot of people are still kind of shaking their heads, not sure how this happened and why this happened, and it's unfair, and still going through the grief process. He was close to so many people, including his teammates there. Obviously, the Jackets are also going to have a helmet sticker honoring him and his brother. They're going to have both of their numbers and I think some doves on there, and then they're going to have a jersey patch as well. They're going to celebrate the memory of the Gaudreau brothers on opening night, and like I said, they're probably going to add more to it as the season goes along, but they're certainly really focused on honoring Johnny here and how important he was to the team and the hockey community in general. A young life taken away too soon, and of course they're not going to exclude his brother, who obviously was a hockey player himself, and obviously those two were extremely close, so it makes sense to kind of honor them both. So that we learned today as well. The Columbus Blue Jackets, just a quick note on them as well regarding some trade talk. They are still very active in the trade market. Doesn't sound like there's anything close or imminent right now, but Don Waddell has made it clear, and we've talked about in the last couple of days, that they do want to add more forwards. They signed James Van Riemsdyk, which was a start, but there's really not a lot out there left on the free agent market. They could, if they can't find a trade that they really like, in the coming days. There won't be too long before you start seeing the waiver wire activity pick up as teams start making cuts in training camp, so they can scour that as well. But they said at least one. I wouldn't be shocked if they added two. So the Jackets are still heavily involved in various different conversations around a trade to pick up another forward, but we don't know where things stand. I've suggested Montreal is a prime place, but even Toronto, who we're going to talk about later on, they're also a prime target too, because they have some things, according to some insiders, that they'd like to do as well. Speaking of Toronto, big news this morning regarding the Maple Leafs when it comes to Leafs ownership. Of course, we know they're owned by parent company Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and of course that company is owned jointly by Rogers and Bell at a 75% joint stake, evenly at 37.5%, and of course Larry Tannenbaum owns the other 25%. Well, we found out this morning that Rogers is buying out the Bell shares. So I did do a dedicated video on this morning if you want a little bit more in-depth analysis, but just to kind of summarize, Rogers is buying the Bell shares, so they will have 75% control of MLSE. That is valued at $3.5 billion, so that's $3.5 billion just for that 37.5% stake. But of course, you got to remember, this isn't just the Maple Leafs. This is MLSE as a whole, which encompasses the Maple Leafs, the Toronto Raptors, the Toronto Marlies, and they have the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL, and I think the soccer team too. So there's lots in there, lots of entities in the sports world that they own. So clearly, Rogers is going to have a major stranglehold here on Toronto sports team, because of course they're also the owner of the Toronto Blue Jays. So clearly Rogers is going to have a big say in all this. We don't know how it's going to impact their because they are the national rights holder in Canada as well for the NHL package, which I know they've lost a lot of money. We've seen on the media side where there's been lots of cuts over the years. They sold their Amazon their Monday night games for the coming season. So for the first time, part of that Sportsnet package is going to be on Amazon now. So I don't know what that means for the future of them being the rights holder. Of course, Bell owns TSN, the other major sports channel network in Canada. I know there's still the regional sports package. They will still have the Leafs regional rights, so that's not changing in that sense. And there is, I believe, a clause in there that Larry Tannenbaum's 25% can be bought out, I believe, in 2026, if I'm not mistaken. So, at some point here in the near future, Rogers could have complete control. Right now, they're run by a board of directors, and obviously it's not unusual when you get, Bell reps and you get Rogers reps, and again, you get Larry Tannenbaum, for them to not all see eye to eye and to not get along. And of course, it also creates a whole different pecking order for making decisions and all that. It's a unique structure, and some think it's not the greatest in that sense. If Rogers gets to the point where they own 75 or 100%, there's obviously less people involved with making those decisions. It might in some ways be better, but there's some people that argue in some ways it could be worse as well. If you look at how the Blue Jays were run, very much more so like, at the end of the day, it is a business, but it's run with the profits in mind, not so much the product and the winning. So, we'll see how things go. Obviously, this could be a big role change in how things are done. But keep in mind, for this year, it's probably not going to really make any serious difference, because sales like this take an extended time to close. It's not expected to close till sometime around mid-2025, so we're probably looking at around like May, June of next year, so right around the end of the season, so to speak. And so we'll see what happens from there. And of course, it's part of league approval, which I don't suspect will have any issues either. So big news in Toronto in that sense today. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Leafs might be doing once we get through some of the other news here on the Trade Talk. We had some signings today. Of course, we know time's ticking for some of these RFAs to get done. We had 3 deals. One came in late yesterday after I'd already recorded last night's news and rumor video, but the Dallas Stars signed Thomas Harley last night, 2 years at $4 million a year, which I think is a pretty fair contract on a short-term bridge deal. There was, desire from both sides to maybe work out a longer-term deal, which I think Harley would have probably been in that 7x7 range. But I think for his sake, going short-term might up his value anyway. He had a really good season last year. If he continues to have more seasons, at least at that, if not get better, then he can command more money anyway. So from that perspective, it's not going to be good for Dallas to have to fork out even more money to cover his salary. But at the end of the day, he's in camp. He's signed. He's an important piece back there, which is the main thing. The Nashville Predators also signed Philip Tomasino, 1 year, $825. And the Kings signed Arthur Kaliyev, 1 year, $825 as well. Both of those players, I know Kaliyev, it was pretty public that he wanted to be traded. Never happened. For Tomasino, I haven't heard for sure that he wanted to trade, but I know there's a lot of speculation that he would be more than okay with it, knowing that with all the additions that the Predators have made, he's going to have a really tough time cracking that lineup. So again, both kind of two players that are kind of at a different stage of their career, trying to see if it really need to move on from that organization. Now, in Kaliyev's case, with the changes that the Kings have made, he might actually have a shot to get a decent top 6, top 9 role. I think that could be a similar, just like Nick Robertson in Toronto, but yet we continue to hear the trade winds around Robertson. You look at the roster and you see an opportunity, but it sounds like the team and the player are both still interested in a move. We'll see. At the end of the day, they're signed, they're in camp, which ups their value and increases the chances of them getting what they want. So we'll see. A couple of teams today announced new captains. The Chicago Blackhawks have named Nick Foligno the 35th captain in franchise history. Of course, there was a lot of speculation that maybe Connor Bedard would get the C. I didn't think they'd give it to him just yet. I mean, I know he's possibly going to be a generational player. It certainly looks that way. He's got tons of talent, real special kid. But why put that pressure on him if he doesn't need to be? They've got a prime candidate there. Nick Foligno's been a captain before. He's basically the dad of the team, so to speak. I think he's a great choice. Honestly, he's still, he's a good example for them, both on a work ethic standpoint, how to be a pro and all that. Like he's a perfect fit there. Unfortunately for Foligno, as long as he's there, I mean, he's not going to be able to chase a Stanley Cup. They're not going to get that far along in a couple of years that he signed for. But so that's the only thing with Foligno is I'm sure he'd love to win a Stanley Cup, but he's doing really good work there in Chicago too. So you're good on them for choosing a good leader there for an opportunity like that. And in Tampa, no big surprise, but the successor to Steven Stamkos is his good buddy, Victor Hedman. Hedman, to me, was the obvious choice in the Tampa season preview video I posted earlier. I had that video recorded from a day or two ago. That was already done before we knew this news, and I had mentioned in there one of the questions that I wanted to know how they were going to proceed to kind of, see how the season was going to go. So are they going to name a captain? Who's going to be their leadership group? And I suggested that Victor Hedman was the ideal person, and that turned out to be exactly what they did. So I think they made the right choice. He's been there a long time, good leader, on and off the ice. Again, excellent choice. Hedman obviously becomes the 11th captain in team history. Like I said, it's going to be weird not seeing Stamkos with the Lightning this year. Some injuries that we learned about today as well. The first day on the ice, and Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo had to leave. Something happened. Don't know quite exactly what it was, but he did not return. And the Sabres, just all they said so far is he's being evaluated. So we'll have to wait and see what that means for him. Hopefully that's not the way you want to start your season, start your camp with an injury. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. Dallas announced today that Jason Robertson is not going to be available for the start of camp. Is possibly going to miss all of camp. He had a foot surgery at the end of July. He was non-weight bearing for a while, and he's still not fully recovered to the point that he can get on the ice. And general manager Jim Nill indicated that he's going to be absent from camp for all or most, if not all of it. So unfortunate for him. The last time he missed camp, though, he had a phenomenal year. So we'll see if that will make a difference for him. But yeah, the surgery is obviously something that he had to do there. Evander Kane is definitely going to be having surgery with Edmonton. We know that has been speculated for quite a while now, and we learned the full extent of Kane's injuries, and it's a lot worse than anything anybody ever thought. Evander Kane's having surgery on, he's getting a lot cleaned up. Both abductors, 2 hernias, and 2 ab muscles need repair. So that's a lot. So, that's why we don't have a firm timeline on Evander Kane's return. I think with all that, it's probably fair to say he's going to miss the entire season, at the very least the entire regular season. We'll see, but Kane is going to be out for an extended time. The Capitals also confirmed today after completing his physical that TJ Oshie was not deemed fit to play. He is going to be placed on long-term injury reserve and is expected to be there for the entire 24-25 season. Oshie is going to continue to seek out options to hope that his back can improve. But he's dealt with chronic back issues for a few years now, and he had said in the offseason that unless he could get to the point where he was going to be reliable for his team and not be constantly going into the lineup and have all this chronic pain, that he wasn't going to play. And obviously the injuries are still pretty severe in that sense that he's not able to do that. We learned a bunch about PTOs today, some that were not known before. Edmonton has Mike Hoffman in training camp on a PTO. That was a bit of a surprise, so we'll see if he can land a contract there. We also learned as well that Detroit has a few surprise ones, including Isaac Radcliffe and Alex Chiasson. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember how long it's been since Alex Chiasson played in the NHL, so I'm a little bit surprised that he's in camp. But a couple of surprise PTOs that we did not know about in that sense. Jeremy Swayman, obviously the biggest RFA, still remains unsigned. He's not the only one, of course. Don Sweeney, the GM of the Bruins, did speak today, like many GMs did, and said that he's disappointed that they don't have a deal in place as of right now, that they weren't able to get something done before training camp starts. But the weird part is he said that he's confident that they'll be able to get a deal in place before the December 1st cutoff so that Swayman wouldn't miss the entire season. I'm like, you're saying December 1st and you're confident before that? Like, that just kind of threw everybody for a loop. There were reporters from the Bruins media that had it from one or two sources last night saying that a Swayman deal was reportedly done and that they wouldn't be surprised if it was announced today at the beginning of training camp. And that's not what happened at all. Not only was it not announced, but we got these comments from Sweeney, which made it sound like it was nowhere near close. Some reporters still say and insist that it sounds like it's a lot closer than what we're led to believe, and they wouldn't be surprised if it is done sometime in the next few days or by the weekend. Don Sweeney even went out of his way as well to criticize, I think, I guess would have been the Spit and Chicklets podcast, who put out the comment saying that they weren't returning Swayman's calls, and it was like 3 weeks going on or something like that. He really gave them an earful in his comments, but at the end of the day, those guys, I know Ryan Whitney's a Boston area guy, has lots of connections as a former player in the NHL. I don't know who told him what, but they're sticking by it. So clearly there's been a major gap this whole time between the two sides and lots of different stories out there. I hope for their sake it gets done soon, because if he does miss time in a regular season or miss a bunch of time in camp, it's not going to be good for his year. And he is so important to that team that it's really hard to imagine what things would be like without him. So we'll have to wait and see where it goes. But it didn't really give me a lot of optimism based on the comments from general manager Don Sweeney today. Of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs, as I mentioned, are still looking to make some moves, according to Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com. They're still not quite content with everything. We know that Max Pacioretty's there in a PTO, and he reiterated today on the NHL Network on his appearance that there's definitely some moves in the mix, and there's also some Leaf injuries that could have an impact as well. Brad Treliving actually mentioned that the youngsters, like any 19-year-olds, if they have some team players that could play junior this year, if they're able to push for spots and earn them, that they're open to creating room to make sure they get the opportunity. Clearly, they just want the best team, the best chance to win, and if that means getting Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, or whatnot in there, they will do it. At the same time, though, we do have some injuries on that side. Now, Connor Dewar, who was re-signed by the Leafs after being acquired at the deadline last year, is going to be, I don't have a timeline, but he is out with a shoulder injury. Apparently, he had, I believe, a surgery in the offseason. He's not ready yet. Fraser Minton and Ben Danford were both injured during the rookie tournament and are going to be out. Danford was concussed after a bad hit. They said he's coming along well, so you just never know with concussions. It could be a few days, it could be a week. You really don't know. So with him, it's hard to say, but he's definitely going to be going to junior when that time comes. I have no doubt about that. Fraser Minton, on the other hand, suffered a high ankle sprain. So that can be, 4 to 6 weeks. That's not usually super quick. And it can really derail your year. Even though it's 4 to 6 weeks, it can be a fair bit longer before you kind of feel normal again. So with all that said, they may have a difficult time kind of pushing for spots. Easton Cowan, on the other hand, is healthy would probably be the main one to really push them, I think. But on the other hand, like Pagnotta's saying that there's still some more moves that come. He mentions Nick Robertson's name. It's still very much out there. They do want to sign Pacioretty, which is a foregone conclusion. He's going to get a deal, but they got to make some space, of course. But Robertson's name's still out there, according to Pagnotta, that he's still very much likely to get moved. Connor Timmins is out there. If they can't trade Timmins, they'll put him on waivers, and then they can bury that full contract if he clears. If not, if he gets picked up, then great, it's gone either way. Calle Jarnkrok's another name I've seen from other sources as well as a potential cap dump. David Kampf to some extent, but I think Jarnkrok might be a little bit more likely. But at the end of the day, there's lots of opportunity here. The Leafs are not done tinkering with their lineup, and they definitely want to make some moves, which is what we've been kind of hearing leading into camp. Obviously now, like with things kind of getting underway, it sounds like they're definitely going to try Nylander at center for a while, and we'll see how that affects their lines. I know Mitch Marner and John Tavares both spoke to the media today. Both expressed their desire to remain with the Maple Leafs, even though they're on expiring contracts, that they both want to extend their time in their hometown, and certainly hope to get extensions in place, but we don't know how that's going to go. I don't know. Based on what we've heard, I don't think there's a huge rush or desire from the team to get those done just yet. I think they kind of want to wait, see how they play, and see how things go before really getting too deep into those conversations or negotiations. But at the end of the day, we're going to see some trade activity. It's bound to happen throughout the course of training camp. There's always a bit of activity as teams kind of see what they have, see what they like, what they don't like, what they're missing. And the Leafs are going to be busy trying to tinker here a bit by the looks of things, involving a lot of their younger talent as well. Could be going in or out of their lineup. And then, of course, like guys like Jarnkrok and Kampf, as well as Timmins, are your prime candidates for a cost-cutting move, if you will. So let me know what your thoughts are on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.